I was building homes in the fall of 2008 for the longest-standing local development company in northern Colorado when the pandemic of mortgage failures began to collapse the entire global economy. Greed and irresponsibility had created an economy based exclusively on amassing a scorecard of money and hubris about capabilities. When the shine came off of what everyone had so gleefully described as brilliant, the economy was in ruins, and the average American was left holding the bag on the biggest economic mess since the Great Depression. Countless movies have been made about what happened and who was responsible. It's been analyzed from all sides and given an extensive post-mortem. Most have concluded that the issue was deregulation, and that by breaking down those protective walls of government, the banks and money mongers were able to create institutions too big to fail. But their terminology is incorrect. The word deregulation is used on purpose to describe something so that we, the people, remain divided over what happened. In this last season of life, I've had to re-examine everything I know about the world and government. The global response to the pandemic showed me more cards than a bad poker player, and it became evident that the world we live in is not the one we suppose it is. Looking back on the Great Recession, I now understand that what was really being said and done at the time was nothing different than the playbook of this last era. Certainly there were different actors, but the results were just as devastating for the American family and were insidiously just as harmful. Every movie and documentary starts in about the same place, the mid-70s, when mortgages were able to be piled together into a security mechanism. Perhaps that was the result of loosening of rules, but more likely the rules would never have been loosened had there not been a massive effort at collusion. Government rarely steps in to undo what has already been done without extreme pressures from something or someone. Breaking down all of the safety mechanisms that had been put into place after the Depression is not something that is typically inherent of government to do on its own accord. It takes someone pushing the idea in order to move the needle. The word deregulation has been an intentional choice. It is used because small business owners like myself are terrified of the regulator. They make life miserable and filled with extra work, and in many cases can be so overbearing that the business we own and operate can be subjected to punitive fines and even closure. Our children's lives depend upon our success at the business, and so when politicians discuss deregulation, the average American finds themselves in favor of it. So when Ronald Reagan or Bill Clinton got on a stage to talk about deregulating the banks and financial sectors, we projected our same terror as an average American upon the system they were proposing this loosening of the rules. Walls and protections came down, and the consolidation of the financial sector of our economy was in full swing. We lost the savings and loans, small local banks, independent institutions, the stockbroker and his firm. Everything became a part of 5 to 10 large institutions. And it happened not because a politician got a wild hair, but because they had been persuaded into collusion through donations and wealth. By the time we arrive at 2008, the Jenga tower was precariously teetering. This collusional system had allowed all of the people in their institutions to be blameless in their own minds. They made risky bets, captured the agencies that were supposedly regulating them, and made Washington their own accomplice in the tragedy. My town in Colorado has been voted one of the best places to live year over year. Its location and proximity to the mountains, the university, and the employment base have all made this spot exceptionally desirable. Secondarily to that, it has always had a small town feel and unique architecture and design. Our company was a land development company that had worked in the region for nearly 50 years in 2008. We supplied local builders with lots and neighborhoods for them to build their homes in and make a living. It was a symbiotic relationship that allowed for creativity and diversity of product. Every builder thought that what they had to offer was unique and suited different tastes within the marketplace. It made for great neighborhoods, and I believe contributes significantly as to why northern Colorado is as unique and desired as it is. But it all ended with the collapse of the financial markets. Banks called the loans on builders and developers and disallowed the buying of lots with borrowed money. Within 2 years, most of the local builders we had worked with were gone, too tired to muscle through the overbearing costs and unable to compete with the national builders, who had amassed a huge war chest of cash prior to the crash. National companies could buy platted, undeveloped lots for pennies on the dollar, and within a 5-year period, nearly all of the local small builders and developers were gone. We were told when the economy started to fail that the government had to step in to rescue these banks and institutions because they had become too big to fail. GE, GM, AIG, Merrill Lynch were all companies so embedded in every aspect of the economy that if one of them went, the whole system would collapse. Perhaps they weren't wrong about that, but the question should be asked, why would we allow such a collusion-laden system to develop in the first place? It likely wasn't based upon anything more than the simple maxim that when banks get rich, the politicians get richer. Their campaigns became easier. Their lives encountered more wealth and opulence than they could ever imagine. In 2008, the average person new to Congress came in with a net wealth of less than $250,000. By the time they would leave, most had exceeded millionaire status. They didn't get that way by their pay in Congress. They got it by a system that allows for lobbyists and special interests to buy their way into favor and wealth. We became an economy so large and so interconnected with government that the only conclusion of these vice-driven stretches for greed is that we are now so big we will fail. Our debt as a country and as consumers is unimaginable. We have bailed out bank after bank, not because they were good places who got caught in an economic panic, but because they were unscrupulous places that did terrible things that made people panic. They did it all under the supposed watchful eye of the government, and with their ignorant abstention or worse, their absolute blessing. What happened in 2008 changed the building and home purchase experience forever. It consolidated it into market research plans with infinitesimal differences in creativity. It pushed all of the planning and uniqueness that an individual builder or developer might bring into the most dumbed-down version of everything. Neighborhoods became stale and lackluster, filled with row upon row of indistinguishably different homes that were all priced the same, sold the same, and built the same. The local flavor that a builder might bring disappeared, and the housing industry became monolithic and monotonous. It's an industry more regulated than most, and yet the results are worse than they were 20 years ago. This collusion-driven system took away the most creative aspects of the industry, scaled it up to a stock-worthy enterprise, and kicked the teeth right out of the average American. The media and the politicians knew what they were saying when they used the word deregulation. They knew that they could keep us distracted from the real story going on behind the scenes. There was no loosening of the rules. There was a rewriting of them for those who were most connected. They were the ones getting the skids greased for them, so that they could create wealth that was unimagined in previous generations. Wall Street knows that if they can eliminate the average American small business, they have less to worry about or compete with. There will be no governance upon their ability to dominate the landscape because there will be nothing there to shine a competing light upon their blandness. They saw the best way to do it was not within the marketplace of ideas, but with the power of the law on their side. So far, it has been incredibly successful, and it has been aided and abetted by people like myself who have stood firm for deregulation because of what it means to me personally. So it's time to rethink our use of words and call things out for what they are. We live in a crony capitalist system that is far more fascist than it is free market. The people at the top of this behemoth know how to make everything work in their favor, and they get government to write or unwrite rules for them, and only them. The country and the average American actually needs less regulation, less busybody governmental minions telling everyone who is average how to live, act, and behave. But America does need an honest government who begins to place the regular citizen above their donors. There needs to be a stop to the politicians trading stocks and cushy giveaways for campaigns. Corporations should be treated the same as the individual. There should be limits upon their capabilities at donations, and they should be held to the same standard as the American citizen. We are not in a deregulated world. We live deep within a collusion between government and industry.